3 years ago, my older brother sold the only home our parents had. In just 2 weeks, the year burned through more than $700. And my parents kept saying, "It's okay, he's okay, he's our firstborn. He'll make things right." As for me, the one who tried to stop it from the very beginning, I was called an ungrateful son. They said, "You've always been jealous of your brother. You've been waiting your whole life to see him fail." I didn't say another word. I walked away from that house, carrying nothing but an old suitcase. I opened it. My father was standing there, soaked to the bone, behind him. My mother trembled, clinging to his back, their gray hair dripping with rain. They had nowhere left to go. My father looked at me. His voice was barely a whisper. "Son, could your mother and I stay here, just for a few days?" Before I could answer, a black SUV pulled into the driveway. The door swung open. My older brother stepped out, still wearing an expensive designer suit. A Rolex on his wrist, polished leather shoes. He looked at our parents, then at me, and smiled. "You're the one with money. You take care of them. From now on, they're your responsibility." I stood there in silence, looking at the 3 people in front of me. One of them had destroyed our family. The other 2 had spent their entire lives protecting him. And now, all of them expected me to save them. But what none of them knew was that I had been keeping a secret for the past 3 years. A secret powerful enough to make all three of them lose everything in a single night. My name is Daniel. I'm 39 years old. If someone asked me what hurt the most in my life, my answer wouldn't be poverty or failure. It would be this: growing up in a family where your parents always loved one child more than the other. My older brother's name is Michael. He's 4 years older than me. From the day he was born, he was the pride of our family. He got decent grades. He was great at soccer, and he always knew exactly how to charm adults. Whenever we had guests over, my father would smile proudly. "This is my oldest son. He's incredibly smart. One day, he's going to do great things." Then he'd point at me. "And this is the younger one. He's a good kid, hardworking." That's about it. The guests would laugh politely. Both boys seemed wonderful. But he knew better. In my father's heart, my brother and I had never stood on equal ground. My mother wasn't any different. If Michael came home with up, she'd cook a huge dinner to celebrate. If I brought home straight, she'd simply pat me on the head. "Good job. Keep working hard." For years, he believed that if I just tried a little harder, my parents would finally notice me. But as time went by, he realized something. Some races are lost before they even begin. When Michael turned 18, my father sold his old pickup truck to pay for Michael's college tuition. Back then, we weren't a wealthy family. That truck was the most valuable thing my father owned. Without it, he rode an old bicycle, more than 6 miles to the construction site every single day. He asked him once, "Don't you regret selling it?" He smiled. "Investing in your brother is the best investment I've ever made." I looked at his calloused hands and said nothing. 2 years later, it was my turn to graduate from high school. I had been accepted into college too. But during dinner, my father quietly placed my acceptance letter on the table. "We don't have acceptance letter. We don't have the money. Learn a trade instead. One child in college is enough." My mother lowered her head. She didn't say a word. Michael kept eating, as if nothing had happened. That night, I tore my acceptance letter into pieces. One piece after another fell onto the floor. I told myself maybe that was simply my fate. From that day on, I went to work. During the day, I worked in a machine shop. At night, I unloaded freight in a warehouse. Some days, I worked 16 hours straight. My hands bled. My body ached, but I never complained. I only had one knot. If I couldn't rely on anyone else, I'd have to stand on my own 2 feet. Meanwhile, Michael graduated from college. He landed a job at a financial firm. Good salary, sharp suits, a polished image. Every time he came home, he had talked about luxury parties, million-dollar deals, sports cars. Our parents listened with shining eyes. My father proudly told the neighbors, "My son is going to buy a mansion. In a few years, he'll be able to retire." He simply smiled. because I knew something they didn't. Michael was very good at talking, but not everything that came out of his mouth was true. The first time I truly became suspicious was when he asked my father for $90,000. He said, "I found an incredible investment. Just give me 6 months. It'll pay you back double." My father didn't hesitate for a second. He emptied his entire savings account and handed every dollar to Michael. I spoke carefully. "Dad, you should read the contract first." Michael frowned immediately. "You think I'd scam our own father?" My father slammed his chopsticks onto the table. "That's enough. Your brother is educated. He knows how to make money. Stop questioning him all the time." I stayed silent. 6 months later, the investment disappeared. Michael forced a smile. "The market crashed. I'm a victim too." My father sighed. "It's all right. You're still young. Everyone makes mistakes." I looked at my father, then at Michael. For the first time, I realized something. My parents hadn't been deceived. They had chosen to close their eyes. The years went by, and the pattern never changed. Michael bought a new car, a new phone, a new watch, a new girlfriend, a new job. Everything changed, except the way he lived. He always spent more than he earned. Whenever he ran out of money, he came home. And every single time, our parents rescued him. Sometimes, with money they didn't even have. I warned them more times than I could count. "Dad, Mom, stop giving him money. He'll never learn to take responsibility for his own life." But their answer was always the same. "He's your brother. Family take care of family." He nodded and stopped arguing, because I finally understood. Inside that house, love had become indulgence. And that indulgence was slowly dragging our entire family toward the edge of a cliff. I just never imagined the day everything collapsed would come so much sooner than I had ever expected. Everything truly began the day my father retired. He was 69. My mother was 60 Thai. After more than 40 years of hard work, they had finally reached the point where they could enjoy a peaceful life. They weren't where they could have a life. They weren't wealthy. But they still had their home, no mortgage, a small amount of savings, and a modest pension, enough to get by. My father used to say, "As long as we still have this house, your mother and I have nothing to fear. Our future is secure." None of us realized that the very house he cherished would soon become Michael's next target, One evening, he came home carrying a thick folder. His face lit up with excitement. "Dad, Mom, I found the opportunity of a lifetime. All we have to do is sell this house. I'll invest the money in a real estate project. Give me 1 year, and I'll buy you a home 3 times better than this one." My father looked stunned. "Sell the house?" Michael nodded confidently. "You two aren't getting any younger. I'm going to buy a mansion. You'll live with me. It'll cover every expense." My mother looked at my father. Her eyes were filled with hope. She believed him from the very first sentence. That same evening, my father called me. "Come over for dinner this weekend. There's something we need to discuss." The moment I hung up, I had a bad feeling. Something wasn't right. That weekend, the moment I walked into the house, I found sitting in the living room. A Sako sitting in the living room. A stack of documents was spread across the coffee table. He smiled. Perfect timing. I was just explaining everything to Mom and Dad. I picked up the paperwork. After only a few minutes, my heart sank. This wasn't a safe investment. It wasn't a completed development. It wasn't even an established company. It was a brand new startup. No track record, no collateral, no guarantees. Nothing except promises. I set the papers back down. Looked straight at my father. "Dad, don't sign." Michael shot to his feet. "What do you know about investing?" I answered calmly. "Apparently, more than you do. Because if you knew what you were doing, you wouldn't have lost $1,000 the last time." The room froze. My father frowned. "Why bring up the past?" I took a deep breath. "Dad, I don't care what Michael wants to do. But this is the only home you and Mom have. If you lose it, you'll have nothing left." Michael let out a cold laugh. "You're afraid I'll succeed. You'd rather Mom and Dad spend the rest of their lives in this old house, instead of letting me give them the life they deserve." My mother turned to me. Her voice was filled with disappointment. Why do you always assume the worst about your brother? He's doing this for us. I looked at her for a long moment, then quietly asked, what if he fails? He fails? No one answered. I turned back to Michael. Are you willing to guarantee this investment? With your own assets? He said nothing. Only a few seconds passed. But that silence told me everything I needed to know. I faced my father again. Do you see? If even he won't risk his own money, why would you risk your entire future? My father slowly stood up. He walked to the window and remained silent for what felt like forever. For a moment, I thought he was changing his mind. Then he turned around. I trust Michael. Just 4 words. 4 words that destroyed every bit of hope I had left. 1 week later, the house was sold for $790,000. Every penny was wired directly into Michael's personal bank account, not my father's, not a joint account. His alone. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Dad, have you lost your mind? That was everything you and Mon. He looked at me calmly. He's my son. I trust him. That was the first time in my life I raised my voice at my father. Trust isn't a contract. It isn't legal protection, and it will never replace responsibility. Before I could say another word, my father slapped me. Heart. He pointed toward the front door. If you can't trust your brother, then get out of my house. The room fell silent. I looked at my father, then at my mother. She didn't say a word. She didn't stop him. Behind them, Michael stood quietly, the corner of his mouth curled upward. It wasn't the smile of someone celebrating victory. It was the smile of a man who knew that from this moment on, no one would ever stand in his way again. I bent down, picked up my house key, placed it gently on the table. Fine. From this day forward, I will never interfere in your decisions again. But whatever happens after today, don't come looking for me. I turned around and walked out of the house, the place I had called home. For 32 years, I didn't know it then, but that would be the last time in my life I would ever call that place home. That place, home. I walked away from that house with nothing but a single suitcase, a few changes of clothes, and an old pickup truck with more than 200,000 miles on it. That first night, I slept inside my truck, parked in the company parking lot, not because I had run out of money, but because I no longer knew where home was. An ordeal. The next morning had happened. Dunding had happened. No one knew that the night before, I had lost my family. 3 months later, I spent every dollar I had saved and bought a small condo, just over 700 square feet, no backyard, no swimming pool, nothing impressive. No backyard, no swimming pool, nothing impressive. But for the first time in my life, everything inside those walls belonged to me. No one could throw me out. No one could take it away. No one could take it away. I had finally left the past behind. But the past wasn't finished with me. About 6 months later, Michael called. His voice was full of excitement. I did it. The investment is taking off. I'm about to double my money. I simply replied, congratulations. Then I hung up. I didn't ask any questions. I didn't care anymore. 9 months later, my father called. He sounded happier than I had heard in years. Michael just put a deposit on a mansion. He says he'll move your mother and me in by the end of the year. I didn't say anything. But deep down, something didn't feel right. Because if everything was going so well, why hadn't Michael bought the house yet? Why were my parents still renting a tiny apartment? Still, I kept my promise. I didn't interfere. I didn't ask questions. I didn't offer advice. A year passed. Michael bought another new vehicle, this time a luxury SUV. His social media was filled with photos. A new watch, a yacht, expensive restaurants, luxury vacations. Everyone believed he had become a millionaire. My parents believed it more than anyone. Every time my father called, he'd say the same thing. See? I told you I was right. Michael is finally making it. I would smile. You're right, Dad? Then end the call. I had no desire to argue anymore, because some people don't believe the truth until they've paid the price for ignoring it. 3 months later, an old friend called me. He was an accountant, and he had once worked with Michael. He asked, "Daniel, are you still in touch with your brother?" I frowned. "Why? Did something happen?" There was a long silence. Then he lowered his voice. "You should keep an eye on him. His finances. They're in serious trouble." I pressed for more, but he shook me off. "I can't tell you anything. I just thought you deserved a warning." That night, I sat in front of my computer for hours. For the first time in over a year, I searched for the company Michael had invested in. Its website was gone. Its office had been closed. I searched the corporate records. One line appeared on the screen. "Company dissolved." My heart sank. I immediately called my father. No answer. I called my mother. Nothing. I grabbed my car keys, ready to drive over. Then I stopped. 3 years earlier, I had been the one who said, "Whatever happens after today, don't come looking for me." If I showed up now, would it change anything? Anything? Or would I simply become the villain? Who ruined their dream? One more time. I put my phone down and told myself maybe I was just worrying too much. But 2 weeks later, I got another phone call. This time, from an unfamiliar number. I answered. On the other end was my mother's. I answered. On the other end was my mother's voice. She was crying so hard, I could barely understand her. "Daniel, your father is in the hospital. And Michael, he's gone. He disappeared." I froze. The coffee mug in my hand slipped from my fingers. It shattered across the floor. 3 years, and with a single phone call, everything I had feared had finally become reality. I drove straight to the hospital. The entire way there, only one question kept running through my mind. What had Michael done? When I arrived, my mother was sitting alone outside the emergency room. Only 3 years had passed, but she looked 10 years older. Her hair was almost completely gray. Her eyes were swollen from crying. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. The moment she saw me, she burst into tears. "Daniel, I'm so sorry. It was the first time in years that I had heard my mother say those words. But at that moment, I wasn't thinking about the past. I only asked one question. Where's Dad?" She pointed toward the emergency room. The doctor said he had a heart attack. The moment she finished, I closed my eyes. Everything had happened exactly the way I had feared. An hour later, the doctor came out. "He's stable now, but he must avoid any emotional shock." I nodded, then followed my mother into his room. My father lay quietly in the hospital bed. His face was pale. His chest was covered with monitoring wires. He looked at me. There was no trace of the stubborn man I had known. He whispered. He walked over. Without saying a word, he reached for my hand. The hand that had once been so strong was now little more than skin and bone. His voice trembled. I was wrong. I froze. In 39 years, it was the first time my father had ever admitted he was wrong. He closed his eyes. Tears rolled down his cheeks. Michael, he took everything. He turned toward my mother. She slowly told me what had happened. After selling the house, Michael invested only a small portion of the money. The rest has spent paying off old debts, buying luxury cars, expensive watches, lavish vacations, renting a mansion, creating the image of a successful businessman. When the company collapsed, Tam had borrowed even more money, personal loans, bank loans, money from friends. And worst of all, he used our parents' names to guarantee multiple loans. They had notable loans. They had no idea. They simply signed the paperwork. Because Michael kept saying, it's just a formality. A month earlier, the bank had started sending overdue notices. Interest piled on top of interest. That was when my parents discovered their names were attached to countless loan agreements. They called Michael. His phone was disconnected. They went to his office. It was empty. They went to the mansion he had been renting. The property manager told them he moved out more than 2 weeks ago. No forwarding address, no message, no explanation. He disappeared as though he had never existed. My father still refused to believe it. He'll come back? He would never abandon us then. 3 days earlier, a lawyer from the bank arrived. He placed a thick stack of documents on the table in front of my father, page after page. Every signature belonged to my parents. The total debt had climbed to more than $800,000. They hadn't just lost their home. They hadn't just lost their savings. They were now buried under a mountain of debt. My father held the documents, read every page, then clutched his chest and collapsed onto the floor. That was why he was lying in this hospital bed today. I sat there for a long time. No one spoke. Finally, my father looked at me. His voice was barely audible. You warned me. You told me. Trust doesn't replace responsibility. I didn't listen. This is all my fault. My mother broke down again. For 3 years, I kept believing you would be the one to come back and apologize. But the ones who owe an apology are your father and me. I looked at both of them and realized the anger I had carried for so many years was gone. All that remained was exhaustion, because the truth was this person who destroyed our family wasn't also the blind favoritism who destroyed our family wasn't only Michael. It was only Michael. It was also the blind favoritism that had shaped him for nearly 40 years. Just then, my phone vibrated. A text message. The sender was Michael. It contained only one short message. You've got money. Take care of mom and dad. You've always been the responsible one anyway. I stared at the screen. Then I laughed. A cold laugh, so unfamiliar, even I barely recognized it. Because in that moment, I made a decision that would change the lives of all for us, forever. I left the hospital just before sunrise. My phone was still in my pocket. Michael's text message was still there. I didn't delete it. I didn't reply. I just kept reading the same words over and over again. You've got money. You've always been the responsible one for 3 years. He never asked how our parents were doing. He never called. He never came home. But the moment everything collapsed, the very first thing he did was shove the responsibility onto me. The next morning, I returned to the hospital. Both of my parents were awake. My father looked at me. His eyes were filled with hope. He spoke slowly. Son, I know, I don't deserve to ask you for anything. But could you help your mother and me? Just this one last time? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I placed a large brown envelope on the bedside table. Inside were all of my financial records. My father opened it. His eyes widened. For the past 3 years, I hadn't been living the life they imagined. I wasn't just a department manager. I had also started a small manufacturing business. I worked during the day, took on private contracts at night, and spent my weekends making deliveries myself. Every dollar I earned, I saved. No debt, no risky investments, no luxury lifestyle. By the end of the 3rd year, I had paid off my condo, purchased a second workshop, and built savings of nearly $1 million. My mother burst into tears. Daniel, why? Why didn't you ever tell us? I looked at her calmly. Because you never wanted to know. The room fell silent. No one could deny it. For years, every conversation had been about Michael. How's your brother doing? Has he bought the house yet? Did he get another promotion? Not once. Did either of them ask, Daniel, are you tired? Are you doing okay? Do you need anything from us? I wasn't angry anymore. Those questions no longer mattered. My father lowered his head. Tears fell onto the paperwork. I've missed so much. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out another folder. These were the title documents to a house. My mother looked up in confusion. What is this? I bought it 8 months ago. My plan was simple. When you were truly too old to live on your own, I would ask you both to move in. Not because of Michael. Not because I felt obligated, but because you're still my parents. My father covered his face and cried like a child. But I placed my hand over the documents and gently pulled them back. I will never transfer this house to anyone. They both looked at me. I spoke slowly, making sure every word was clear. The house will stay in my name. It'll pay every bill. It'll cover every medical expense. It'll make sure you never have to worry again. But I will never give you cash, not $1. If I ever find out that you're secretly helping Michael again, my support ends immediately. My father nodded over and over. I promise. This time, I truly promise. I looked at him, then picked up my phone and finally replied to Michael. Only one sentence. Mom and Dad will never go hungry, but starting today, you'll never get another dollar from them again. Less than a minute later, my phone rang. Michael, I answered. His voice sounded exactly the same. Don't overreact. Just send me a little money. It'll fix everything. I laughed, a quiet laugh. The last time. Whose money were you planning to use? Silence. Then his tone changed. They are our parents. Why are you acting like this? I answered without hesitation. No. What you've always needed wasn't our parents. You needed a wallet. For nearly 40 years. That wallet was Dad. Now that he's broke, you want me to become your next wallet. There wasn't another word, only heavy breathing. I ended the call and blocked Michael's number forever. 1 week later, I met with an attorney. Every legal document concerning my parents' care was put in writing. Every expense, every bill, every asset, everything was documented. Everything was transparent. No one would ever be able to exploit them again. That was also the day I finally understood something. Forgiveness doesn't mean going back to the way things were. Love doesn't mean allowing yourself to be used. Sometimes, the greatest way to protect your family is to set the boundaries you should have set a very long time ago. 9 years later, my father had recovered. He wasn't as strong as he used to be, but they was able to take his morning walks again. My mother started planting flowers, small flowers, lining the front porch of their new home. It wasn't a mansion. It wasn't the luxury home Michael had promised them. It was simply a modest house. But for the first time in years, it was a place where my parents could finally sleep in peace. No more collection calls, no more letters from the bank, no more fear of waking up homeless the next morning. One afternoon, my father sat beside me in the backyard, had stared at the sky for a long time, then quietly asked, "Do you still hate me, son?" I didn't answer immediately. There was a time when I believed I would never forgive him. But time had taught me something. Holding on to resentment only keeps one person suffering, yourself. I looked at my father and gave him a small smile. I'm not angry anymore. But I'll never forget. My father nodded. He understood. Some wounds may heal, but the scars remain forever. A week later, my parents met with their attorney. They rewrote their entire will. This time, there was no favoritism, no blind promises. Everything was divided equally. More importantly, they added one final clause. If Michael ever returned and tried to claim any inheritance, they would first have to accept full legal responsibility for every debt he had created. No one would ever be allowed to pay those debts for him, not even me. After signing the documents, my father looked at me. See, it's what I should have done. Many years ago, I simply nodded. 3 months later, Michael came back, not to our parents' house, but to my company. He looked much older. The designer suit was gone. The expensive Rolex had disappeared too. He stood in the parking lot, waiting for me to finish work. When I walked outside, he forced a weak smile. Daniel, I know I was wrong. From the beginning, I only wanted to succeed. I never meant to hurt Mom and Dad. I looked at him for a long moment, then asked quietly, "Did you come here to apologize or to borrow money?" Michael lowered his head. He didn't answer. That silence alone told me everything. I reached into my wallet, pulled out a business card, and handed it to him. "This is an employment center. They're hiring factory workers. If you're serious about rebuilding your life, start here." Michael stared at the card. His hand trembled. "So, you're not going to help me?" I answered calmly. "I am helping you. But I won't save you with money. I only give you a chance to save yourself." I turned around and walked toward my truck. Behind me, Michael didn't call my name again. Maybe, for the first time in his life, he finally understood that no one can live forever, doing someone else's sacrifices. That evening, I went home. My parents were already there. The three of us shared a simple dinner. There were no arguments, no favoritism, only ordinary conversations. For the first time, in nearly 40 years, he finally understood what a real family felt like. Some parents never intend to hurt their children, but blind love can quietly nurture selfishness, and by the time they realize it, the price may already be too high. If today's story touched your heart, remember this: loving someone doesn't mean protecting them from every consequence of their actions, because sometimes the thing that truly saves a family isn't unconditional sacrifice. It's having the courage to say, no, thank you, for spending your time with Veritale until the very end of today's story. If you end up very end of today's story, if you enjoy family betrayal stories, powerful life lessons, and emotional journeys of redemption and healing, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next story. Veritale. Every betrayal hides a truth. Every truth changes a life.